Good afternoon. This is Lynn Petronella, your hostess for Call Me Mommy, the radio broadcast for everybody to listen to. And today I wanted to share some other things that I wanted to uh, impart upon you about America. We were talking the other day about America the Beautiful and how beautiful America is, and how the Chinese have a word for America that means most beautiful country. And I was saying that if you haven't traveled and seen this beautiful country, you should get out and look at some of the beautiful sights, the mountains, the uh, the streams, the lakes, the national parks. They're just magnificent sights. And in addition to America being beautiful, we've also had the nomer of America the Brave. And I want to talk about America the Brave today because the bravery of America, I believe, started with Christopher Columbus, or if you want to say the Vikings, whoever you think came here first, who had to come across the Atlantic Ocean to a place they did not know really existed, and then try to make a life here in a place thousands of miles away from what they knew. And that, to me, takes bravery. And we call those people pioneers. And I do believe that the American spirit is based on bravery and being a pioneer. And as I was growing up and getting into my own understanding of being an American, because you can ask what is an American, and we all probably have a little bit of a different understanding of it. My understanding of the history of America was pioneers who came here who were very brave. And I would include in that my relatives who also came here across the Atlantic Ocean years later in the 1800s. And if you understand crossing the Atlantic Ocean in some of the boats then, to me that was a very brave act of courage, not knowing where you were going. And they came here looking for a better life, the men, the women, the children, the animals. And they landed in a place they knew nothing about based on their faith, because most of them had a lot of faith in God. And they wanted to have freedom of religion and be free from the King of England or from oppression from wherever they were coming from. And although not everybody came that way, that's the premise of America, to come here, have freedom, start over, and have a better life. So that's the ultimate idea and understanding of what America really is. And we were raised with that spirit, and we were raised to respect the people that came here before us, who fought to make it a country, like George Washington, who fought many of his battles in New York, where I'm from. So that's a very historic place to me, because many of the cities on the East Coast, the 13 original colonies, were all started in the 1600s, which is, like 400 years ago now, almost 400 years ago. And the town I happen to be from began in 1680. So my little town, which was named after an Indian, the Manhasset Indians, was formed in 1680, and Manhattan was named after the Manhattan Indians. A lot of Indian names. And despite the fact that, not everything was a perfect immigration system, we came here, we landed here, and people, raised farms and families and became a country, and a lot of the other historical things that have happened. I'm not going to get into all the detail, but it took a lot of bravery to fight a civil war, win a civil war, and in a civil war, a war against the British, and become an actual American colony that could defeat the British. And that took a tremendous amount of bravery, courage, and I believe faith in God, because George Washington had a tremendous amount of faith. And I believe that this nation was based on that and the Judeo-Christian philosophy. And bravery comes from, I would say, having that kind of ultimate faith that God is on your side and God is watching over you. And I think that was something that was bred into me at a young age. If you do the right thing, the right things will happen and you will be protected and guided. And I do believe that from the bottom of my heart and soul. So, getting back to America the Brave, I thought it was, it took a lot of courage for people to come here on a boat and not know what was happening. And then I, in turn, internalized that as I was growing up and living out west. And I thought, well, the people that came out west really had to have a lot of bravery. They didn't even know what out west was, what kind of terrain, Indians, or whatever they were going to face. And I got very into that whole spirit of it when I was running and training in the mountains of Colorado, because I was doing that in the late 70s. I mean, you got to remember, I mean, that was maybe 100 years after people came out there. We act like everybody was living all across the country for a long time. 100 years is kind of the blink of an eye, really. I mean, you know, living in Colorado in the late 70s was, for me, coming from New York, almost like landing on the moon. There were no big buildings. It was like being Jeremiah Johnson out in the woods, but I didn't think of it at that time. I thought, you know, here I'm going to end up getting married, having a family, all these things. A lot of those things didn't happen, but I learned to land on my feet, and I learned to take up running in a town called Boulder, Colorado, where the Olympic gold medalist Frank Shorter was living. It's all outlined in my book, Nowhere to Run: An American Odyssey. And you can pick up a copy of it or listen to it on Kindle on Amazon. I'm not going to get into all the details. Those are in the book. But I love writing poetry. I got a journalism degree. I love writing. I've written scripts. I've written stories. And one of the poems that I wrote in the beginning of my book speaks about the bravery of Americans, and particularly the American women. So I begin this poem, I call it American Woman, and I hope you will enjoy this poem with me today that I wrote. They came before us on wagons and trains, across mountains and prairies of all kinds of terrains, through winter, fall, spring, and summer days, with white men and Indians pioneering American ways, seeking land and freedom from places before, following where no one had gone and seeking more. They risked life and limb through the wind and the rain, through good times and bad, they fought on just the same. Their names have been lost into history for now, but let me remind you of what they did and how. They hail Annie and Emma and Sarah and Jane, Emily, Susan, and many others to name. They came before us sometimes all alone, some richer, some poorer, to make America their new home. They gave birth without medicine, raised children in the wild, had men who left them and never came back, some barely a child. They gained strength and courage from their American quest. From New York to the City of Angels, they did their remarkable best. Off into the wilderness, no road to follow or cross. They went off on pure faith. Their freedom was boss. Native plants, animals, and people too made their adventure a difficult one in search of something new. They looked for land, gold, fur skins, and more. Never knew what was coming around that next bend, behind that other door. Sometimes it was bloody and deadly, this game that they played, but their thirst for freedom was what their thirst for freedom was something God gave. To pursue with their courage and faith this new land, to tame it and love it, it was His holy plan. For God had given America His beauty from above, had adorned her with mountains, animals, and people with his love. So with guns by their side and horses to tame, they rode across the prairie with God's vision in their heads. To own land and till it, to raise children free, to taste the fruits of their labors as God intended it to be. Away from a king who had taken his toll, they pushed on through the woods and night with guts and with soul. These pioneer women went on the attack. They stood by their men. They could never look back. Sometimes they were left all alone in the night, and they came for they risked life and limb all alone in the night. You see, the women who fought through the brush in the night opened the day with a vision so bright. Freedom to think, speak, and act in the manner they choose. This was something they longed for, and something they would not lose. The woman who fought for freedom to think, speak, act in the manner they chose, for those rights these new Americans were willing their lives to lose. You say that sounds so easy, so simple for sure, but up until now, other governments did these things abhor. So freedom rung through the blood of this new nation. A United States was now a creation. The sons of these women would fight for this land and die for the victory to take freedom's stand. Then when all the war did subside, Americans rebuilt their nation with new American pride. Bound by a cause that ran deeper than blood, bound by the land, their emotions did flood. A flag with its stars and stripes was now born. By Betsy, our new country would now be adorned. A woman would make that red, white, and blue for all the world to see, because without these American women, we would never truly be free. I wrote that poem because I think it took courage and bravery on both men and women's parts. And you see bits and pieces of this in movies that are made and, accounts that are written. And when I was running in Colorado, there's not much out there. I mean, in the 70s, I had a pair of men's Nikes and a mountain, that was it. And you learn to live by your own grit. I mean, they say when being strong is all you have. I thought about them because you don't have a choice. You have to be strong. You're out there in the elements. There's nothing around. And you're going to woman up or man up. You're going to see what you're made out of. And I think that's a kind of a good test, kind of in a weird way. I was kind of thrown in this situation, but I don't think it was an accident. And I tested myself, my strength, and I thought about these women that came here. And many of them died for our freedom. Many people died for our freedom. So I think the story today is about the bravery of American people who came before us. And as we all know, we stand on the shoulders of people who came before us. And a lot of them sacrificed their life. I mean, that's the ultimate sacrifice, to sacrifice your life. I mean, there were young boys who died at 17 signing up for a war for this country. And I want to stress that because I think a lot of us have become a little bit lazy. I mean, the laziness really bothers me. And the things that we get into seem kind of banal and immature, like constantly being on a computer doing games and, overeating, doing things that just seem sort of very immature. So, giving of yourself, I think America is a very sacrificing country. Maybe we've sacrificed too much for other people. And I think now it's time for us to band together as a nation, as a family under God, our country, and take better care of each other. Because, a lot of people died for us to come and be here. And I think that's where, getting into this immigration issue, there's this rub. I don't want to be political. I just want to be logical. Logically speaking, if we have a beautiful nation, by all stretch of the imagination. I think we want to keep it a beautiful nation. I don't think that's a racist thing. I think that's a pride thing. We want to keep it clean and less crime and more prosperity and more peace. That's the ultimate American dream. Money is great, but without all those other things, I think we're missing the purpose. You know, there was a moral fortitude. There was a sense of integrity. I do think people were more strict about the way men and women would behave. I think it's more strict in terms of rules. And we got away from that. I think we have a very liberal justice system. We don't take crime seriously. I think that has a serious impact on the entire nation. And I do think we have to shore up our understanding of, you know, how somebody else being a criminal impacts the freedoms of other people. And we've seen that over the last 4 years pretty strongly. And that's why having law and order has to be the first rule for a nation, so we can all enjoy the benefits of a beautiful country. That's all it is. It doesn't have to do with any president that's in office. It has to do with the premise of enjoying this nation. It's home of the free because of the brave. We had a lot of brave people fight for this country to have its freedoms. Freedoms mean freedom from crime, freedom from drugs, freedom from negative things that impact the culture as large. So I think we fell down a slippery slope. I think America has some bad addictions, and I think we need to address these addictions. Anything too much becomes a bad thing. So readjusting the clock to go in a different direction, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. Because you have to look at, you know, future generations, what we're going to leave them as a culture and as a country. So, as a country, our language is English. As a country, we have borders. We have some customs that we do like as a Judeo-Christian beginning nation. And yes, we are tolerant of other religions, not to the point of allowing them to take over. But I think there has to be mutual respect for Judeo-Christian people, and not a complete whitewashing of the past of America in order to change it into something I don't think it was meant to be. That's my personal opinion. That's how we were raised, to respect the flag, to respect the people who died to make this country free. And women were a big part of it, and I'm proud to be an American woman because I got to be a pioneer in this country. It's the only country, even though it wasn't easy to do, because let's face it, there's a lot of misogyny, but even though it wasn't easy, we were still able to get the women's marathon and do things in America, because without it being an American thing, without Americans being pioneers, without me being in the United States of America, I would have never been hired as an American woman to run the largest running program in the world, get millions of people around the world interested in running, get the women's events in and help elevate the culture so people could get in shape and have some physical fitness, which I think helps your mental state and physically keeps you, you know, in shape for other things you have to do in your life. So I think all around, without me being an American girl, I would have never had that pioneering experience. And that's why I wrote my poem, American Woman, in the beginning of my book. Because without those American women, I would never have been able to have my American journey. Without their bravery, I could not have been able to do what I did. And I was happy to do it. And I'm happy to have this podcast, and I'm happy to share that information with you today. So I hope you go out and find something that makes you feel happy and brave, and do something that's really super American today.